Let the great annual debate begin. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has announced the nominees for the class of 2024, and the acts selected are as controversial as ever. Rock Hall 2024. That's right now on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so you won't miss future reviews and more. The 2024 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominations have been announced, and like every year, the list is certain to be a polarizing one. For an institution intended to honor the history of rock and roll, it's amazing how frustrated and sometimes even angry fans can get over the acts that get nominated or inducted. And I get it. Every year, it's easy to look at the announced nominees and marvel at the legacy acts that have yet to be inducted, listed alongside younger acts in just their first or second year of eligibility. But to be honest, if longevity was the chief criteria for inclusion in the Rock Hall, I think it would be a far less interesting institution. I'm actually very much in favor of the Rock Hall's efforts to try to balance the induction roster each year with a mix of older and so-called newer acts. I like the variety that it brings to the ceremony. I'm also in favor of the way they've diversified the types of acts they're including in their nominations. Over the past several years, we've seen an increasing number of hip-hop acts receiving nominations. I think that's appropriate. If you look at how popular music has evolved, I think it makes complete sense. After all, hip-hop, rap, and of course R&B all have their roots in rock and roll. Hell, the very genesis of rock and roll music should largely be credited to black musicians, so it seems downright disrespectful not to include their contributions to the evolution of the genre. But I know not everyone is going to agree about that and about how rock and roll should be defined. I've heard all the arguments before, and I don't want to rehash all the comments I've made on this subject in my previous videos, but here's the key thing that you should know about my feelings about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't take it very seriously. I can't. For all the reasons everyone complains about, yes, but the difference is while some take umbrage at who and what gets included, my response is more like, so what? And it isn't so what as in I don't care. It's more that I don't want to get so caught up in the debate that it isn't any fun anymore. Because it's rock and roll. It's supposed to be fun. And for me, and hopefully for you, it's fun to speculate about who I think may or may not get inducted and who might win the fan vote and about who should get used to repeating the phrase, it's an honor just to be nominated. So let's talk about the nominations. There are 15 acts on the ballot this year, and they are A Tribe Called Quest, Cher, Dave Matthews Band, Eric B. and Rakim, Foreigner, Jane's Addiction, Kool and the Gang, Lenny Kravitz, Mariah Carey, Mary J. Blige, Oasis, Ozzy Osbourne, Peter Frampton, Sade, and Sinead O'Connor. Very interesting list this year. It feels unusually heavy with first-time nominees making up 10 of the 15 acts. And among the 5 repeat nominations, only A Tribe Called Quest is a carryover from last year. This marks the hip-hop act's 3rd nomination, also making them the most nominated act on the ballot. Not that 3 nominations is a lot. It's actually a pretty low, high bar, if that makes sense. It's typical to see an act with 4 or 5 prior nominations on the ballot, sometimes more. So this group is still fairly fresh, so to speak. As for what's not on the list this year, there's 2 big surprises for me. First off, there's no country acts included. 2 years ago, we got Dolly Parton, a selection which was met with much controversy, including an initial rejection of the nomination from Dolly herself. Of course, in 2023, she delivered, as promised, her Rockstar album as a gesture to live up to the honor. 2024 now marks 2 years without another country act. Many, if not most of you, will say, good. I'm not saying good or bad, just that I'm surprised, that's all. The other surprise for me is the absence of Jimmy Buffett. Following his death last year and a posthumous album featuring all-star cameos, I really expected he'd receive his first nomination this year. Sadly, for all the parrot heads out there, It didn't happen. And if it didn't happen in the year following his death, odds are now slim it will happen at all. Turning our attention to the acts that did make the list, I think Ozzy Osbourne's inclusion on the list is the one I'm most happy about. Believe it or not, this is Ozzy's first nomination for the Rock Hall, in spite of the fact that he's been eligible for almost 20 years. Of course, Osbourne was inducted into the Rock Hall with Black Sabbath in 2006, but he's never had a nod as a solo act, a fact I highlighted a few years ago in my Rock Hall SNUBS video. I can't help but suspect the reportedly declining state of Ozzy's health had an influence on the nominating committee, though that certainly doesn't justify how long they've ignored him. Still, the Rock Hall has a pretty poor history when it comes to supporting metal acts. Sabbath was nominated 8 times before finally being inducted. I sincerely hope they don't put Ozzy through that again. Another act that is shockingly a first-time nominee this year is Cher. Many of you are probably asking, wait, isn't she in the Rock Hall already with Sonny and Cher? No, she is not. This is Cher's first nomination of any kind, in spite of being eligible for more than 30 years. Considering her decades-spanning career as both a duo and a solo act, it's an understatement to say she's overdue for recognition, and I think she's very likely to claim her crown this year. Then we have Sinead O'Connor, an artist that I'm happy to see receive a nomination, but I wouldn't support for induction. I know that sounds like a very contradictory opinion, so let me explain. When Sinead passed away last year, I was genuinely saddened. You may have seen my short memorial video here on the channel where I talked about what her music meant to me. I was a fan from the release of her very first album, so I'm pleased to see that the Rock Hall nominating committee appreciated her enough to include her on this year's list. But I think there's also validity to the phrase I mentioned earlier, it's an honor just to be nominated. As much as I may love her, I don't think Sinead's music contribution ever rose to a level that earned Rock Hall enshrinement. I think a lot of that has to do with her infamous Saturday Night Live performance, when an early incident of cancel culture essentially handicapped the rest of her career. I do think she deserves to be recognized for her artistry, but I think the title of Rock Hall nominee should be the limit of that recognition. I don't think she'll get the votes either, though I am curious to see how she fares in the fan vote. 2024 sees the return of the Dave Matthews Band to the nomination list. They were previously nominated in 2020 and absolutely dominated the fan vote. Everyone, including me, was shocked when they didn't end up being selected for induction. The fan vote winners usually do end up getting enough Rock Hall member votes to be inducted, so not seeing DMB on the final list was quite a twist. I expect they'll fare just as well with the fan vote this time around, and that the member vote will rally around them as well. If Dave Matthews Band sees a huge turnout from the fans but still gets no love from the Rock Hall, the ants will march for sure. Unpopular opinion time. Mariah Carey deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Regular viewers of this channel may recall that I included Whitney Houston on my list of the top 10 Rock Hall snubs several years ago. Many people disagreed, but obviously the Rock Hall did not, because they did end up inducting her in 2020. Like Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey has one of the most iconic and legendary voices in the history of music. Rock and roll purists will dismiss both singers based on genre, but that's not an argument I accept. The Rock Hall has been including R&B singers since the very beginning, including the first woman inducted, Aretha Franklin. This marks the first nomination for Carey, who has been eligible since 2016. This nod was inevitable, in my opinion, and I fully expect she'll make the list of inductees when they're announced later this spring. But Mariah's induction will come at a cost for other nominees. Any other year, Mary J. Blige would be a strong contender, but I don't see it happening here on her second nomination. Perhaps next time the third time's a charm. Then there's first-time nominee Sade. Man, does she have one of the silkiest voices in all of music. Even as a middle schooler, I loved her music and played her first 2 albums on cassette all the time. But I don't see her getting inducted here. Not against Mariah, and if I'm placing future odds, I won't be surprised if this ends up being her one and only nomination. Based on the track-by-track audience feedback in the past, I'd guess that Foreigner is the act you all are most excited about. They rank number 3 in my audience-voted Rock Hall Snubs countdown, behind Jethro Tull and Iron Maiden. Since neither of those acts are nominated this year, Foreigner stands as your highest-rated act on the ballot. Shockingly, this is the band's first ever nomination. I'm expecting a strong showing in the fan vote for these guys, and I think they have a strong chance at a long overdue induction. Now, undoubtedly, the nominations of rap acts Eric B. and Rakim and A Tribe Called Quest will be the most contentious of the year. The strictly rock and roll crowd will object on the basis of genre, and as I outlined earlier, I get it. I don't agree, but I get it. Realistically, only one of the two, if either, is likely to get in this year. The Rock Hall is not going to put in two rap acts in the same year. Both acts are prior nominees, with Tribe, of course, being nominated just last year. Eric B. and Rakim haven't been nominated again since their first nod in 2012. As hip-hop acts go, I have to say that Tribe has generally received strong support from track-by-track viewers, and the surviving members of the group are still active today. Between the two, I may slightly prefer Eric B. and Rakim, but I think for 2024, the Rock Hall will go with A Tribe Called Quest. I've talked in the past about how the Rock Hall's obvious bias for American acts has left many UK acts on the sidelines. Well, not American acts so much as American popularity. Last year, it took the huge success of Kate Bush's song in a popular American TV show to finally justify enough votes to get her into the Rock Hall after multiple unsuccessful nominations. So the question is, what are the odds that Oasis will make the cut? Obviously, they had some big global hits in the mid-90s, but their popularity in the US was fleeting. Overseas in England, they became one of the most popular rock bands of all time. Is that UK success going to be enough to sway American voters that may only remember them for Wonderwall? I'm predicting no. I hate to say that because at least we can all agree they are a true rock and roll band. Still, this is only their first nomination, and I don't think it will be the last. The one artist I'm most on the fence about this year is Peter Frampton. He's yet another long-snubbed artist receiving his very first nomination, in spite of being eligible for almost 25 years. No doubt he had a few big hits in the 70s, and Frampton Comes Alive is one of the most iconic live albums ever released. He's steadily released albums for decades, with his most recent arriving in 2021. The question is he a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame level talent? I mean, that should be the question for all the nominees, I guess. Personally, I'm not fully sold on Frampton, but I suspect he's more of a musician's musician. I know his guitar artistry is well revered among other players, and that reverence will likely drive a lot of support. He also more clearly meets the definition of rock for pretty much everyone, and he's one of just a few legacy acts on the ballot, so all told, I think he's got a strong shot at making the class of 2024. As for some of the other nominees, I have a strong feeling 2024 is not going to be their year. Kool and the Gang is unquestionably a fun nomination, but I don't see them rising above the rest. Again, it's a deserved nod for recognition for them to be nominated and for their first time, but that should be as far as it goes for them. Then there's Lenny Kravitz, also seeing his first nomination this year. I do dig him, and he's still an active artist, with a new album on the way this year, in fact. But I don't think he's likely to make the cut this year either. Jane's Addiction has received their second nomination in 2024, and again, as much as I love these guys, I don't think they'll be inducted this time. I'm not convinced their body of work is strong enough or influential enough to elevate them to Rock Hall level status. If the creation of Lollapalooza is a factor, that may tip the scales in their favor, but for 2024, I'm thinking it's a no. All right, now it's time to make some predictions. Who do I think will be inducted into the Rock Hall in 2024? Remember, these aren't me picking my personal favorites. That would be a very different list. These are the acts I think the voting members of the Rock Hall are going to pick, starting with Mariah Carey, Cher, Dave Matthews Band, Peter Frampton, Ozzy Osbourne, and A Tribe Called Quest. If I include a wildcard pick, it would be Foreigner. As for the fan vote, which as I've said basically counts for almost nothing, I think Dave Matthews Band will win, and we'll see strong showings from Mariah, Oasis, and perhaps Foreigner as well. Speaking of the fan vote, if you want to make your voice heard, be sure to participate by visiting vote.rockhall.com. The fan vote is open through April 25th, with the top 5 vote earners earning slots on the official fan ballot to be tallied with the member vote. The final list of the 2024 Rock Hall inductees will be announced in late April. As for the induction ceremony, no date has been set for that yet, though it will likely be in October or November. Like last year, the ceremony will be broadcast live on Disney Plus, with replays also available on Hulu and ABC TV. Meanwhile, what are your thoughts on this year's list of nominees? Is there anyone you think has a lock on being inducted? Or are there acts you think don't quite deserve the honor? Who is an act that got snubbed this year that you think should be on the ballot? How do you feel about rap and hip-hop going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And are you one of those who thinks the whole thing is just a sham anyway? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Plus, be sure to check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to click subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.